Three juveniles are accused tonight of spelling the N-word out using rocks at DePauw University's Nature Park just off campus. Now, this isn't the first time DePauw University has been plagued with race-related comments.
Yeah, a string of vulgar notes and messages were found on campus about 3 weeks ago.
In my personal opinion, oftentimes justice requires disruption and interruption of our scheduled lives.
I've always felt uncomfortable. I understand that. And
Do you really?
So it's going to take us some time to be able to work together.
We don't have time. You know what we do got? We got action though. We need to take action.
You have asked that I not interrupt you, and yet I can't get a full answer out. There.
So welcome to the story of DePauw University. The month of April has been quite crazy for them. It was in like a lion and out like a very offended lion. Is that March? April showers bring May flowers. Whatever. There was some March in April. And so I just want to go through it and focus not on the students, but on the administration. But because the juicy stuff's from the students, we'll look at how the students behaved. This past month, several incidents happened. One, some racist graffiti was found in a bathroom at a place, a meeting place, maybe coffee shop or a bar. I don't know. It's just called a meeting place, but it wasn't on campus. There was some rocks assembled into this thing called the N-word, which is a very, very bad word. And if this word appears, it will trigger college students across the country. And this was in a nature preserve by the campus or affiliated with the campus, another affiliated to the campus place, but it wasn't on campus itself. And then there was another racist graffiti, and then for the love of God, a white girl, a white sorority girl, dressed up as her friend, who's a raver girl. Here's the picture. So what's going on in this picture is that you have a girl with a bunch of like kind of purple stuff smeared on her face. And her explanation for this was that she was dressing up as her friend. Her friend is a raver. Apparently, raver girls, when they keep their clothes on, they're still slathered in goo, crystally starry goo. And these two girls, they went out, and the girl with the smeared stuff on her face had the name tag Blackie on it. And her explanation for that was that her friend that she was dressing up as usually drank so much that she blacked out. So she was called Blackie. Now, this photo went viral across campus and was shown as a display of racial insensitivity. This girl was in blackface and she was being racist. So these four incidences caused the campus to undergo the standard college campus meltdown maneuver.
It's a conundrum because obviously we could let them in, but we made this a press event. If you'd like, we can let them in. I don't know if that's...
Let them in.
Let them in.
We are not safe. We are demands. 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 We are not safe. You have anything to say? Who's picking him?
Yes.
Are you going to meet our demands?
Yes
or no? Are you going to meet our demands?
I will answer your
You
questions.
got the email, right?
Well, this morning we have been working all morning on a whole host of events, and yes, in that process we did get a list of concerns that you have expressed to us, and we are addressing
The demands.
we are addressing every concern that you have given to us, and so we will. Yes, we are hearing you. I want you to know here that we hear you. I recognize the pain that you feel. I am.
Played with me. I had been in your house. Diversity scholar.
scholarships.
We come here.
Thank you so much for that.
We come here damn near forced to change the campus. That's what we're molded into as people of color. Why is it always on us?
Why, when you Google racist incidents that have happened at DePauw, nothing comes up in the past 4 years? Do you know how many students have suffered in those 4 years alone?
And I've been here for 4 years, nothing ain't happening still, so.
That's what I'm
It
saying.
builds up too much. You guys care too much only about your reputation.
I would not spend the next
About the
4
same-
years here being silenced. You will listen to me. That's right. You will listen to us.
Meet our demands.
We are not safe. Meet our demands. We are not safe. We ask you right now, right? Because you say that I'm speaking to you. Thanks. The house, the AAAS house for students of color on this campus, led by a black organization on this campus, will we have the house by next semester?
Yes, you will.
Thank you. Now, you have until the 25th for 2 to 8 to be answered and a plan to come up with. And if we have to come up with a plan, you need to write a check to us, because that's not my job.
What you're not going to do, because what y'all are so accustomed and like to do intentionally, is make this an entire DePauw marketing scheme. Our demands are not for the entire campus to know, and our demands are something that will be met. Send that to the AAAS email. Don't wait for me to finish speaking, please. I really do not want to do more than what I have to do with you right now. When you say that by the end of today, you will have a list of actions and plans for each of our demands, that needs to be sent to the AAAS email. I don't want to see another copy and paste email that goes out to the entire DePauw community about our demands, because that's not for them to see.
And the reason why that needs to be sent to us is because, understand, this is a working document. So you're not going to send us BS and expect that to be it. We want quality.
President, what are the actions that you plan to take against Ellie Locke herself, considering the fact that she was dressed in blackface? I don't care if her family wearing the sign Blackie. Do you realize that this has happened across multiple college campuses across this country, and all of them, pretty much majority of them, have been expelled? What are you going to do about Ellie Locke?
Any person's relationship to DePauw or any of their background, that we deal with each issue separately regardless of the person. So her stand.
I still want to hear from Alan, because Alan had a lot of communication with Ellie Locke.
Okay, can I finish my answer and then let Alan?
I want to hear that too. He didn't answer.
Okay,
You know how much work we got?
I do, and that's why I would.
Do you realize we're at a class for this? Do you realize how much stuff we got to do? But we worried about our safety, bro.
I understand.
Get a raise on a 24-hour basis for 4 years.
Oh.
That's. Folks, I think that we're reaching a point where this is not going to be productive. I'm trying to be as honest and straightforward with you here as I can be, and I'm trying to answer every question that's given. But if I'm continually interrupted, it's very hard to address that.
I don't know what to think. I'm sorry, because the administration lies to us all the time. I'm sorry.
I also have a question, right? I think that this situation is particular in terms of priority and the uproar that has happened on this campus. So the standard judicial process that happens, it needs to be sped up. So give me a date on when we will know the outcome of whatever happens. I need a date.
We need to have all the evidence, and so once I get,
It's been 5 fucking days.
we have.
DePauw has made so many efforts to address this and has still fallen short. We have a day of dialogue. We have a center. Would you please? To the press that is here, we're happy to answer your questions in another way, and I apologize that we weren't able to answer your questions for you today.
Do anything performative with us. 5-5, everything needs to be addressed in that demand list. 1 to 8.
I still don't feel safe. So
Meet our demands. We are not safe. Meet our demands. We are not safe. Meet our demands. We are not safe. Meet our demands. We are not safe.
Okay, the one thing that I want to point out about that was that these protesters were very adamant about nobody seeing their demands until the demands were met, but they were showing this in the middle of a press conference. So it just shows you how out of touch they are. But What I really want to get to is how the administration responded, specifically how some of the vice presidents responded. Now, this is lifted wholesale from an article in The American Conservative written by Rod Dreher. Now, this first email is all in caps, and it's from Ann F. Harris, the Vice President of Academic Affairs, DePauw University, Johnson Family University Professor of Art and Art History. Dear colleagues, every class tomorrow needs to give time to talk about the protests that took place in Créteil and to confront the systemic racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and homophobia that make the hate-filled words that have violated our campus spaces possible and that make it impossible for students of color, Jewish students, Muslim students, and LGBTQ students to feel safe. So, words written in a bathroom stall are enough to seize the concentration of these groups. What does that say about her opinion of these groups? That these groups are so weak that words on a wall upset them. To make this big of a deal of it is to promote not just the soft bigotry of low expectations, but the double-ply bigotry of no expectations with regards to having some grit. And again, this is not to uphold or to uplift racist statements. Those are puerile, it's stupid, but every time these tiny little racist words appear, this is what snowballs. And why does it snowball? Why does this snowball in the institutions of higher education? Let's read on. We, and I refer especially to white, dominant religion, cisgendered faculty who experience the privilege of safety, must all assume responsibility for the safety of our students through vigilance of our spaces and for the work that we so direly need to do in our institution. Talking about race, religion, and sexual identity is part of the job description. If we did not receive training to talk about identity, society, and systemic oppression in our degree-granting institutions, we were ill-served by them for the responsibilities of a contemporary faculty member, and so we have to act, right? So, rush to action. This happened at Laurier. At Laurier, a couple years ago, a poop swastika appeared in a bathroom, and that sent the whole administration into this gearing up of the equity and diversity initiatives, which eventually resulted in what happened to Lindsay Shepherd, which resulted into this statement of free expression, which has now resulted in that freedom of expression being demonstrably run over by the equity and diversity mindset. This is what happens. So words lead to this stuff. Now, who's writing those words? Is it somebody who's a troll? Is it somebody who knows what's going to happen and sees the power of those words? It's like that Ren and Stimpy cartoon.
Can he withstand the temptation to push the button that even now beckons him ever closer? Will he succumb to the maddening urge to eradicate history at the mere push of a single button? No, I can't!
It's kind of like the inverse of Smaug, right? So Smaug, the dragon from The Hobbit, I'm not talking about the freaking movies, I'm talking about the book. Smaug was this dragon, and he had one weak point because his belly was covered with gold except for this one little chink. And if you hit him in that little chink place, then he would die. Now, this is the opposite of Smaug. If you just press this one little button, the dragon arises and goes through and demolishes everything or reconfigures everything in this hierarchy of needs. And the needs that are at the top is all according to this identity business. To continue, classroom bias incident training is a necessary skill for a faculty member today. Training will be available at DePauw Dialogue, working on earlier, and all faculty members will receive training within the next academic year. See? In the meantime, the Diversity and Inclusion LibGuide, which is a library guide or something that you can collate on their website, all these different resources. I just think it's kind of funny that it's called a LibGuide, provides resources. The Pedagogy tab will have resources on classroom discussion. If you need additional support for students in distress, you can call extension SSSS. Education that breaks down white defensiveness and critically analyzes privilege is necessary. Now, this is not education. This is indoctrination. I'm going to read that sentence again. This is not education. This is indoctrination. Education that breaks down white defensiveness and critically analyzes privilege is necessary. Education would be investigation. This is not education. This is breaking down and critiquing. And the critique is all built on this stuff called critical race theories, critical whiteness studies, critical this studies, critical that studies, critical theory. And it all goes back to Frankfurt and blah, 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 blah. We all know about that. So this is the institutionalization of this critical theory. All this critical theory needs is this tiny little grain of sand, this kind of little irritation like in the mouth of a clam that spawns this pearlescent globule of academic restructuralization. That's all it needs. The only way that things will change at DePauw is if we change. Cannot be business as usual. If you were in Cresage tonight, you know the intensity of the pain and frustration and the absolute necessity of a sustained response to the systemic oppression that too many of our students live with. If you were not, please honor the experiences and listen to learn more. Different students will need different kinds of room tomorrow. Please be sensitive to their needs and please talk to each other and act. 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 Now, that was all in caps. She sends another one. Several of you have asked for a list of parameters for today's classes. I provide suggestions below and welcome further expertise. These are by no means exhaustive. There is more to do and learn. To do. Give marginalized students the room to not attend or not participate today, so excuse them from classes. Our campus spaces are under siege. Under siege. Do you see the inflation of what's going on here? What is the negative consequence of inflating these words on a bathroom wall with a siege, with a battalion coming after you? What is the outcome of that? It's that you cause bad actors or students who see that they can take advantage of this situation to be unable to resist the opportunity to take advantage of this situation. This is the same thing that happened at Evergreen, and DePauw has like just over 2,000 students. It's kind of the same environment, though I think they aren't so far gone as the Evergreen faculty. Another thing to do, insist that white students think beyond their own experience. That principle is at the heart of the liberal arts education. Now, white students are called upon to act bigger than they are. So you're raising the expectations of white students, right? And what's that going to do? It's going to cause white students to strive more and more and more, and to demand more and more and more from themselves, to be used to being in an environment that has high expectations of you. The other students will get used to an environment that has a low expectation of you. And what's the outcome of that actually going to be? In the short term, it's going to lift up the minorities and put down the majority, well, just those blanket terms. But in the long term, it's going to lift up the majority and it's going to be a detriment to the minority because they're going to always have low expectations. Low expectations lead to low quality output. That's just a fact of, I don't even know if it's nature. I guess it's nature in a Darwinian sense. I mean, what's a higher expectation than survive or die? I mean, that's the ultimate high expectation, right? White students need to think beyond their experience and engage in a critical analysis of the structures in place at DePauw that marginalize students and create exclusion. Critical analysis. That sounds good, but again, it's applying a certain pattern of thought to every artifact of human society. That's all it is. It's critical theory. It's one theory to rule them all. One theory to bind them. One theory to bring them all, and in the safe space, bind them in the intersections where the justice lies. Do not, if you are a white faculty member, do not ask marginalized students, what do you want us to do? That is a very triggering question, as the work is on us, not them. We are the ones who benefit from the system and thus need to change it. For the same reason, saying I am sorry is also triggering. It is not enough. So don't say you're sorry and don't ask for the input of the people who are most affected. So you're just supposed to change the system without any input into how that would possibly be good for the students that you're trying to help. Just don't do that. Just go along. Just be an ally, right? So shut down your actual critical faculty and accept all these critical theories. And again, this is all in caps, and this is the Vice President of Academic Affairs. Do not think you are going to fix things or make them right. You just said you're going to fix things, but don't think that you're going to do that. The issues are systemic. They're both specific and cumulative. They're both specific and cumulative and systemic. Make up your freaking mind. Doesn't even make sense. Not being defensive, not explaining things away, but critically analyzing the structures that create fear and isolation will be key going forward. Is not this response the reaction that is a reaction of fear, is a reaction, an overreaction, that's based in fear, based in anger, based in worry, based in concern, based in all these nominally good but cumulatively negative emotions and goals and teleologies. Anyways, that's Anne. And then one more from the Dean of Faculty. And again, this is all in caps. These are like, this isn't your aunt on Facebook railing against either Trump or for Trump. This is not that person. These are professionals in an academic environment, hammering away at their keyboards. Dear colleagues, this is from Tamara Baboof, Ed D., Dean of Faculty and Professor of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, of course. Dear colleagues, despite the short notice, we have about 45 faculty and staff come out to discuss Robin DiAngelo's essay on white fragility. In the course of an hour, we began to face and process two key points from the article. Defining racism as the institutional and social power that whites have and exert over people of color, naming white fragility as a series of evasive maneuvers utilized by whites when the issue of racism comes up. White fragility takes the form of rage, anxiety, guilt, fear, tears, refusal to engage, willful ignorance, silence, intellectualizing, seeking comfort, argumentation, and leaving, opting out of difficult dialogues and situations. So basically, any response other than total acceptance of this doctrine is labeled by this doctrine as antithetical to this doctrine, right? This is, Robin DiAngelo has constructed this. It's like one of those burrs that you find in the wild, or those foxtails, right? Any resistance to the foxtail just makes it work further and further and further, because the whole thing is designed to go in one direction. And once you have a certain person in power affect this, then there's no way out of this situation. There's no way out. This silences any sort of dissent. This silences any sort of actually critical thought about this issue, because it's designed in such a way to silence all sort of discussion about this. It's like on Twitter, it's very popular right now for people to say that the white people need to listen. Like, this is a big thing. You need to listen. You need to listen. You need to listen to these other people, because there's no way that you would understand what they're talking about until you listen. And implicit in that you need to listen is actually, after you listen, you need to not speak. It's a one-way thing. That listening means silent yourself. And Robin DiAngelo has kind of taken that sort of silencing maneuver and created this wonderful bit of dogma. This long but not comprehensive list of white defense mechanisms led us to think about how, in our multiple roles on campus, these and other actions may serve as protective pillows that preserve a highly unequal status quo, as well as protect white individuals' self-perceptions as innocent, good, and deserving of privileges withheld from groups of color. Ergo, you are not innocent, you are not good, and you're not deserving of privileges withheld from groups of color, even if you didn't withhold anything. Even if you had high expectations, that is withholding privilege. If you expect your students to act above the bar, to reach, to strive, to not be dissuaded by these petty insults, the status quo is that you, as a marginalized individual, should be marginalized. And it's the status quo that I, as a non-marginalized individual, shouldn't be marginalized. So I'm not going to show you how to get to a better form of living. No, I'm going to prostrate myself and just divest myself of any sort of rigor or authority so that you can uplift yourself in the moment, but not over time. To wrap up, Anne's call to action email from Tuesday was a charge to us, the faculty, not to retreat into white fragility. So, if you haven't done so already, read the D'Angelo article on white fragility attached. Share it with your students. Make it the subject of at least part of your class time this week and early next. Utilize it as a resource in the upcoming weeks to name and begin disrupting the habits of thought and behavior that foster racist hostility. Bring it into your department and committee meetings for discussion. So, what is this going to do other than to entrench the sensitivity of this entire situation? What is this going to do but to magnify these tiny little events into grounds for utter disruption of the learning process? And how is this going to help students going forward? I don't have high hopes for this maneuver, but this is everywhere. Critical race theory, critical studies of all sorts are deeply entrenched in our academic institutions. They don't lead to good jobs, so what these academic institutionalized people do is create jobs within the academic institution to entrench their ideology even more. There's this whole feedback loop of this diversity, equity, critical race stuff that doesn't work actually in the real world. It only works where there's a huge structure that's already successful that can afford to take the hit in it. It's not going to work for small businesses. It's not going to work for interpersonal interaction. In fact, it degrades interpersonal interaction by making these categories of identity and these disparaging remarks against these identities primary in all of our effort to relate to one another as humans. That's what I had for you today. I hope you have a good evening and that you are satisfied with this bit of cat footage that I've placed again at the end. Bijou. 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 Biona. Go get him. Good night.